I still remember the sound the door made that morning, the soft click when it closed, the same sound it had made thousands of times before. But that day, it felt different. It felt final. I didn't know it then. Of course, I was rushing to work, half awake, juggling my coffee, my keys, and the quiet excitement of knowing I'd get home early enough to maybe cook dinner with her. We had been arguing a little those days, but nothing catastrophic. Nothing that suggested she was preparing to erase me from her life. It's strange how you can live beside someone for years, sleep inches away from their heartbeat, and yet never see the storm forming behind their eyes. She kissed me on the cheek that morning. It was soft, almost hesitant, but she smiled. God, she smiled. I didn't know it was the last time. When I came home that evening, I knew something was wrong before I even stepped inside. The air felt hollow, like the house was holding its breath. Her shoes were gone. Her coat, her laptop, the books she kept on her nightstand, the ugly ceramic mug she loved even though it looked like something a child molded out of dirt. Everything. At first, I genuinely thought we had been robbed. I remember running from room to room, opening drawers, checking closets, calling her name like it was some sort of game, and she'd walk out laughing, holding her phone, telling me I was dramatic. But then I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. I called her. The call didn't even ring. Blocked. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. I called again, blocked. Her social media gone. Her email bounced back. It felt like my entire life had been unplugged. At some point, I slid down the hallway wall and just sat there. For a moment, I genuinely thought I was having a heart attack. I couldn't breathe. Every exhale felt like it was tearing something inside me open. There was no letter, no explanation, no fight that triggered it, just absence. A sudden vacuum where a whole life used to be. People say heartbreak feels like drowning. That's not true. Drowning is fast. This felt like being pinned underwater for hours, awake, conscious, watching the light disappear inch by inch. I didn't sleep that night. I walked through the house like a ghost haunting my own life, touching things she used to touch, the blanket she curled up in, the chair she sat in while she worked, the spot on the couch where she used to fall asleep watching shows she never finished. The place smelled like her, vanilla lotion and the faint citrus shampoo she used. I remember opening her side of the closet and seeing that every hanger was empty, angled slightly from being hastily stripped of clothes. I ran my hand along them like they were the ribs of some skeleton, our relationship's corpse. One thing remained, a single hairpin, small, silver, delicate. She left it on purpose, I know now. She was surgical, precise, intentional. Leaving something behind was her way of saying, if you're hurting, it's your fault for caring. It wasn't until the next day that I found out she had also removed her name from the joint lease, signed the papers, had the landlord process everything. All while I was working, while I was texting her things like, do you want me to pick up dinner? Never once suspecting she was standing in our bedroom, quietly packing up her life, and erasing me from it. People always ask, did you see signs? And the truth is, no, but I've replayed every memory so many times that I've begun inventing signs, manufacturing them, twisting harmless moments into warnings I must have missed. Because the alternative is even worse. The idea that the person you loved more than anything could simply switch you off like a light. The next weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, unanswered questions, and panic attacks in grocery store aisles when I saw someone wearing her perfume. But the moment everything shattered wasn't the breakup itself. It came later, unexpected, cruel, ambushing me like grief often does. And that moment, the one that broke me beyond recognition, is something I still dream about a decade later. It was 3 weeks after she vanished when I finally agreed to meet friends for a movie. I hadn't slept properly. Food tasted like cardboard. My chest felt like someone had cinched a belt around my ribs and pulled until it nearly snapped. But I was tired of being alone with my thoughts, tired of staring at walls that still whispered her name. My friends tried to be gentle. They bought my ticket, insisted on popcorn, cracked jokes in the car. I pretended, smiled when I had to, laughed when I remembered how to. The theater lights dimmed, and for the first time since she left, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd make it through a few hours without thinking of her. Then my phone buzzed. At first I ignored it, but something in me, the same stupid instinct that kept checking the door in case she magically walked back and told me to look. I wish I hadn't. The message was from a mutual friend. The kind of message someone sends when they know they're about to destroy you. I don't want to hurt you, but have you seen? My stomach dropped. My vision blurred before I even clicked the link that followed. My fingers trembled so hard I could barely swipe. It wasn't pictures. Not her face. Not her smile. Just words. Words saying she was dating someone. Already. Publicly. Openly. 1 month after leaving me. 1 month after erasing me like a stain on the floor. I felt the theater spin around me. The screen blurred. Voices echoing. The space squeezing in on itself like I'd been swallowed. I stood up so abruptly people flinched. My knees almost buckled, but I managed to leave the theater. I made it into the hallway, then the lobby, then the parking lot. I don't remember much after that except the cold air, the way it stabbed into my lungs, the way my body folded into itself like I was collapsing around the wound she left behind. I sat in my car and cried so hard it didn't even sound human. It was raw, ugly. Animalistic. And then more messages. She's been posting pictures with him. They look serious. I'm sorry. Man, I blocked everyone for a week after that, not out of anger, but because I couldn't survive the drip feed of information. Every update felt like another piece of flesh being torn away. But the worst part wasn't that she found someone new so quickly. It wasn't even that she seemed happy. It was that I believed she deserved happiness. I just couldn't understand why it had to be without me. Why she couldn't give me even a sentence of explanation. One honest moment. One truth to close the wound. That's what people don't understand about sudden heartbreak. It's not just grief. It's confusion, humiliation, self-blame, and a cold void where your future used to be. Over the following months, I tried everything: therapy, hobbies, journaling, traveling, deleting photos, blocking mutual contacts. I even threw away the mug she loved so much, the one she used every morning. But nothing stopped the nightly ritual. Lying awake and replaying the moment, I came home to an empty apartment, and seeing her absence like a ghost sitting on the couch. Then, like grief wanted to twist the knife deeper, another message came. This time, it wasn't about dating. It wasn't about pictures. It was something worse. She was getting married, and she was pregnant. With him. It had been less than a year. I remember reading that message on my lunch break at work, sitting under a tree outside the office. The world continued around me, cars passing, people chatting, the wind rustling leaves, but to me, everything turned silent. That was the day I realized she hadn't just left me. She had replaced me. And in a way, that was a kind of death. The person I loved, the person I thought I'd grow old with, no longer existed. But the grief didn't end there. Grief never ends. After the wedding news, and the next something inside me was something I didn't expect. Grief is strange. It has layers, like sediment in a riverbed, and that moment added a new layer, one that didn't hurt the same way as the others. It felt hollow, like everything inside me was scooped out and replaced with cold air. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls or throw things. I just sat there, staring at my phone, while the world buzzed around me as if nothing catastrophic had just happened. That was the first time I truly understood how a person can walk through life without actually being alive. I lived in that state for months. I'd wake up, stare at the ceiling until my alarm stopped ringing, then drag myself through the day like a malfunctioning robot. People around me kept saying, "You need closure. You need answers. You need to confront her." But what they didn't understand was this: you can't confront a ghost. And she had become exactly that, blocking me, deleting everything, vanishing without a trace. She might as well have evaporated into thin air. So I did what everyone told me to do. I tried to rebuild. I signed up for night classes. I threw myself into studying harder than I ever had in my life. I worked late, took extra shifts, saved money. I traveled, alone, Two places she used to say she wanted to see with me. Roman streets at dusk, Tokyo mornings, rain-soaked Paris evenings. I kept telling myself I wasn't running from her memory. I was chasing my life, but I knew the truth. I was doing everything I could to outrun a ghost that followed me everywhere I went. Every airport terminal, every train window reflection, every silence before falling asleep. She was always there, not as a person, but as a wound that refused to close. My brother saw the truth before I did. One night, after too much whiskey, he sat across from me and said, "Bro, she didn't just leave you. She erased you. That kind of trauma doesn't heal by pretending it never happened. You need to understand you are grieving a death." That word, death, hit me like a punch to the ribs, because it was right. She was alive. Sure, out there somewhere, but the version of her I loved, the person who made me coffee in the mornings and fell asleep on my shoulder during late-night movies and kissed my forehead when she thought I was asleep, that person wasn't alive anymore. Not to me. So I did what grieving people do. I tried to build a new life around the loss, and slowly, painfully, impossibly, I did. I met someone new, someone kind, someone stable, someone who actually communicated instead of disappearing into thin air. We dated. We moved in together. Eventually, we got married. She gave me a home that didn't feel haunted. But here's the thing nobody tells you about being abandoned without explanation. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. Healing means learning to live with a scar that aches in certain weather. 10 years passed. I became successful in my career. I built friendships, a community, a life I would have never built if she stayed. But sometimes, out of nowhere, the past punches through the surface like a hand reaching out of a grave. A song, a scent, a place, a random date on the calendar. And suddenly, 27 again, discovering her empty closet, wondering what the hell I did so wrong that someone could vanish from my life like I was nothing. This time, the trigger was small, stupid, harmless, a notification from an old email account I hadn't checked in years. Just like that, the ghost woke up again, and the storm that followed was something I thought I'd never feel again. I always thought that, after enough time, the past becomes a distant landscape, a blurry shape in the rearview mirror, something you can observe without feeling it. But I learned the hard way that some memories don't fade. They just wait, quietly, patiently, until the smallest thing cracks the door open again. It happened on an ordinary Thursday. I had just finished a long workday. It was raining, that kind of heavy, moody rain that slows the city down and makes everything look like a scene from a melancholic indie film. I decided to take the train home instead of walking. My headphones died earlier that day, so I had no music, no distraction, just my thoughts, which, if I'm being honest, I tried to avoid being alone with. A woman stepped into the train at the next stop. She was wearing a beige coat, the same shade my ex used to wear. Her hair was tied in a similar loose bun. Something in the way she looked around made my body react before my mind had time to catch up. My heart jumped, my stomach twisted, and for a split second I genuinely thought, "It's her." It wasn't, of course, it wasn't, but the damage was already done. My brain went into that old, painful loop like a scratched record. Where would she be now? Would she even recognize me? Does she ever think about what she did to me? Does her husband know how she used to smile in the mornings? Does her child look like her? Like him? Like the life I'll never live? I got off to stations early because my chest felt tight and my hands were shaking. I hadn't had a reaction like that in years. I walked home in the rain without an umbrella, letting the water hide whatever was happening to my face. When I got home, my wife asked if everything was okay. I lied. Not because I wanted to, but because how do you explain to someone you love that you're bleeding from wounds inflicted a decade ago? How do you say, "I love you"? But sometimes ghosts from my past still drag me under. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room with only the refrigerator hum filling the silence, and something inside me cracked open. I realized the real source of my pain wasn't the breakup itself. It wasn't even the betrayal, or the abandonment, or the fact that she married someone else 1 year after disappearing from my life. It was the meaninglessness of it. If someone dies, you grieve. If someone cheats, you heal and move on. If someone tells you I don't love you anymore, you eventually understand and accept it. But disappearing, leaving without a word, cutting a human being out of your life like a thread you accidentally pulled too hard, that leaves a different kind of scar. It makes you question your worth, your reality, your memories, your entire timeline with that person. And 10 years later, in that quiet, dimly lit room, I finally admitted something to myself. I never healed. I just built a life around the wound, and maybe that's why the pain still found me, even after all these years. Maybe heartbreak isn't something you get over. Maybe you just learn to live with the ghost of the life you almost had. At the 47 a.m., unable to sleep, I went through the old box my brother once told me to throw away. I thought I had, but clearly, some part of me held onto it. Hidden in the back of the closet between winter blankets and forgotten suitcases, inside the box, much to my surprise, wasn't a single thing related to my ex. No photos, no letters, no belongings. I truly had erased her from my physical world. What I did find were things from a year after the breakup. My notebook, the one I used while studying at night after work. Inside the first page, I had written, "Start over. Become someone she regret losing." I stared at those words for a long time, and then it hit me. Even my success, my achievements, my growth, they were born not from healing, but from pain. She shaped my life in a way I never wanted her to, and despite everything I built, despite being married to a wonderful woman, despite having friends, a career, a future, part of me was still that man left standing in an empty apartment, trying to understand why. And I realized that part 5, the final chapter, would come sooner than I expected, because something was about to happen that would force me to confront the last demon I'd been avoiding for 10 long years. It happened on a Sunday morning, a slow, quiet morning, the kind where the sun comes through the curtains just enough to warm the room, and you feel like the world is giving you a moment to breathe before the week starts. My wife was still asleep, curled up on her side, one hand under the pillow. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop to answer a few work emails. That's when I saw it, a request in my hidden inbox. A message filtered into the other folder, the place where spam usually goes. It was from her sister. I froze. Her sister and I were never particularly close. Friendly? Yes, but distant. The kind of relationship where you smile at family gatherings, but don't exchange numbers. We hadn't spoken since the breakup. For a decade, she had been nothing more than a name attached to a perfectly ordinary person who belonged to a life I no longer had. And now there she was, in my inbox, with a single line. "I think you deserve to know the truth. Can we talk?" My hands went cold instantly. I don't know how long I stared at the message. Could have been 10 seconds. Could have been 10 minutes. My mind was racing. Why now? Why after 10 years? Why her? Why this? I didn't reply. Not yet. But the rest of the day felt like someone had cracked open a sealed box in my chest. That evening, after wrestling with myself for hours, I finally typed, "What is this about?" The reply came faster than I expected. "It's about my sister. She's very sick, and she asked for you." My heart dropped. I reread the message 3 times, convinced I misunderstood something. Sick. Asked for me. After 10 years of silence. After vanishing without a word. After building an entirely new life. 1,000 emotions hit me at once. Anger, confusion, fear, a strange sense of duty, and beneath all of it, pain, that familiar old ache, the one I tried to drown in accomplishments and routines and the belief that I had moved on. I asked what happened. The sister replied, "She has late-stage heart failure. Doctors say she doesn't have much time. She's been asking about you for months." My chest tightened. She wanted to see me. After 10 years. After everything. But why? I paced around the room for nearly an hour. My wife noticed I was restless, but I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell the person you love that the ghost of your past suddenly reached out with a dying request? I went outside for air, walked until my legs hurt, and eventually found myself sitting on a bench near a quiet park. Rain from the previous night still clung to the grass. Another message arrived. She said she never meant to disappear on you. She said she panicked, that she made the worst decision of her life. She said she wanted to tell you, but then things snowballed, and she thought you hated her. I felt a strange, hollow sinking in my stomach. That explanation, that word, panicked, felt so small, so insufficient, like trying to bandage a decade-old wound with a flimsy napkin. I typed, deleted, typed again. Why didn't she say something sooner? The sister replied, shame, fear, and then, life happened too fast for her to undo what she did. She told me she loved you, but she didn't know how to fix it. And now she thinks it's too late, but she still wants to apologize before. The message didn't finish the sentence. It didn't have to. I leaned back, staring at the sky. My chest hurt, my throat felt tight, and suddenly, the last 10 years played in my head like a montage. My empty apartment, her silence, my brother telling me to move on, my travels, my degree, my job, my wife's laughter, my successes and failures, the nights when I pretended it didn't hurt, the days when I believed I finally healed. And now this, a dying apology, a truth I never asked for, a door reopening, us to close forever. I sat there for a long time until the cold started settling into my bones. And then, slowly, heavily, I typed the only question that mattered. What does she want from me? The reply came almost instantly. Just one thing. She wants to tell you the truth in person, and to ask for forgiveness. I closed my eyes. Forgiveness. A word so simple, yet so heavy it could crush a mountain. Part of me wanted to scream. Why now? Why not when I begged for answers? Why not when I cried myself to sleep? Why not when you moved on and married someone else? Another part, the quiet, broken, human part, just felt tired. So unbearably tired. I didn't answer the message that night. Instead, I walked home slowly, the whole world muted around me. My wife was already asleep when I climbed into bed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something painfully beautiful. My life had meaning. My present was real. My love now was honest and safe. But the wound from 10 years ago, it didn't disappear. It didn't fade. It just lived there, quietly, shaping who I became. And now the past was reaching out for closure. Not for a second chance, not to rebuild anything, but to hand me the final missing puzzle piece of a story that had haunted me half my life. As I lay there next to the woman I built a life with, I whispered to myself, I don't know if I can forgive her, but maybe I can finally stop bleeding. The next morning, I sent one final message, tell me where she is, and with that, after 10 long, painful years, I finally walked toward the ending of the story that nearly destroyed me, ready, at last, to let it go.